Not only is February American Heart Month, it's a time where we celebrate Valentine's Day and that special someone. It's also a time that we celebrate National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. And what better time than to talk about sexual health? So I have Mr. James Swain here with me, and we're going to talk a little bit about sexual health and what that really means. Welcome back to My Better Living. On this channel, we discuss real struggles, real realities for real people that want a real change. If you love this content, please make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification button so you always know when there's a new video. So when I think about sexual health, one of the things that I think about is feeling free, feeling liberated, and feeling confident in the things that you would do with your body and being healthy doing that.
You know, you were talking about having the liberty to do, whatever you feel is free. And sometimes I don't think that that's always best for our, sexual health.
In what way?
I mean, just for an example, like there's consequences that come with, say having several different sexual partners. You got HIV, you got STDs, things of that nature.
Right. Well, then I will also say coupled with that is being safe. And getting down to the bottom of it, last week we focused a lot on protecting your heart. And I think that in protecting your heart, you protect your emotions, but you protect yourself. And so I think that people feel free when they feel safe. And so I would agree with you that one of the ways that we could feel liberated in our sexuality and feel free in what we do sexually is by protecting ourselves. I would say that was probably one of the, top ways that you would feel, sexually healthy. Another thing that I think that makes someone sexually healthy is really understanding their body and I'm going to say this for women, because I think that for women, it's a lot harder for us to really come to terms with what sexy means to us. We get bombarded a lot with images, with, negativity and things that people put on us or project on us as to what we should think about when we think about being sexy or when we think about being sexual. And so for women, I think it's a little bit different where, we're all in different shapes and different bodies, and we all have different pleasure points and things that excite us or things that maybe turn us off. And, as a female growing up, it was sort of ingrained in us that being sexual was taboo. And so I don't know, maybe other females agree with me that it takes a lot longer for us to get to a point where we feel sexually healthy or in a mindset that we could feel like sexually free.
A lot of times with women, their definition of being sexual is defined by something else. So that can cause strife. And I think an important thing that we have to do is protect our peace, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So how do you find that? And for me, I would say first, you talk about sexual experiences, and you can have sexual experiences with different people. But I think being in a monogamous relationship is probably the first step to, having a strong mindset when it comes to sexual health.
I'm going to actually take it a step back, and I'm saying having a good sense of self is probably the first step. There's a lot of people, I think, that are in monogamous relationships, they're in non-monogamous relationships where maybe they don't feel confident in themselves sexually. So it really doesn't matter who they're with or how many people they're with. If they don't feel confident in themselves, or if they don't feel like their sexual health is healthy. Like a lot of people, I was having a conversation the other day with someone, and they said to me that, a lot of times when you think about sexual health, women think that sex is something that's done to them, and not necessarily that they're an active participant in the sexual act. So going back to learning yourself, learning, what are your pleasure points? What makes you happy? How do you feel about your own body? Do you feel confident in your own body? Because otherwise you're not gonna feel good in any sexual encounter. You're not gonna feel good with any sexual partner, regardless if it's monogamous or not. I know that a lot of people look to monogamy as a way to unleash themselves and feel free with that one person that they can trust. But I think that in some ways we have to trust ourselves first, trust that we can define our own limits when it comes to sex, push some boundaries if we want to when it comes to sex, and be safe doing it.
Sexual health for me is a state of mind. It's a place that you have to be. So you're working against yourself if you're thinking that sex is not for you, it's for your partner, it's for your guy. Again, that's not being in charge of your own thoughts, so to speak. You need to be able to define who it is you are and what it is that you want.
I totally agree. And in that definition of who you are, a lot of times we say, well, who are you? And we think about your personality, maybe your style of dress, how you wear your hair, whether you wear makeup or not. Those are all the things that we use to define ourselves. But, how do you define yourself sexually? Am I someone who is a conservative, traditional sex partner who likes the confines of monogamy, and I like certain traditional setup of sex? There's some people that don't like sex in any place other than the bed, and if that's who they are. And when I said that, a lot of times, I don't mean all women, so I don't want to generalize it, but I will say that for girls and for young women, we were raised to believe that we should abstain until marriage. But we are also raised to believe that it's okay for the guy to sort of sow his royal oats and, figure out sexually. And I think that because of that, men probably get to a point where they figure out themselves sexually a little bit faster than girls, just because we were told to put a lid on it. We were told to keep our legs closed. We were told, we weren't raised to say, hey, sexuality is an extension of yourself, and that it's okay to explore your sexuality or explore your sexual being in the same way that a guy does. And I think that a lot of us, we come late to the party, where even in the early, not that we don't have sex early, but even in having sex early, there's sort of a shame label to it. So you may not feel as free to do the things sexually that you might want to do, regardless if it's safe, because you feel like a cloud of shame on it. And so I think that, not only teaching sexual health early, but not putting these sort of labels on what a guy should be doing sexually versus what a girl should be doing sexually.
Do you think that a person's sexual health they could be in a good spot with their sexual health if they're promiscuous?
Well, I think the promiscuity can take on different shapes and forms. I think that some people may be promiscuous because they might be in the act of exploring their sexuality and exploring different partners and exploring different experiences. And I'm not here to judge anyone and say that you shouldn't do that. But at the same time, I think that that person has to sort of know themselves and know why they're doing that. It could be, promiscuity, and depending on, where you're at in life and what your age is, may be sort of a symptom of some trauma, some unhealed trauma, or something that might have happened. I always say that unhealed childhood trauma sometimes leads to adult dysfunction. And so if you see adults sometimes doing things like, I don't know why, in my mind, I think that there was like a moment of time where no one expected much of you and it was okay to explore and live your life. But then as you get older and as you learn more, you sort of define yourself as to, how you live your life. And so I think that promiscuity can take on different shapes and forms. You might have some people that are just exploring themselves and exploring their sexuality, exploring what they're like. If they're being safe, hey, who am I to judge? And then there's some that I think are just playing out unhealed trauma.
A reoccurring thing with me is protecting that mindset when it comes to your sexual health. And again, like you said, it comes from within inside. It's not determined on your partner. Your partner is not going to determine that. And when you're involved, with several people, I think it's kind of hard to, be in a good mindset.
How do you feel couples, or even, as we enter into Valentine's Day, I want to know, how do you feel couples should approach sexuality? Even if they've been together, if it's a new relationship, or if they've been together some time, how do you think that they should approach their sexual health?
Well, when you're dealing with someone, you get to a point where you start to know that person, their likes, their what they don't like. But you always have to spice it up and try different things. You talked about people who, their idea of sex is only in bed. Hey, try somewhere else. I'm not gonna give, any suggestions on where, but you have to reinvent yourself, and you gotta try different things.
One of the things that I'm so happy to see in the most recent years is women of all shapes, women of all sizes, really starting to express themselves and say, yes, this is the body that I'm in. Yes, I can still pull them. Yes, I can, I am still a sexual being. And I think that, that is a beautiful thing to see, because I think that we're all, capable of being sexy in our own right. I think that, sexual health is so important. And you mentioned something before we got started about sexual health is almost asking someone, how's your mental health?
Imagine, some guys deal with erectile dysfunction. I would imagine that you wouldn't be in a very good place in your sexual health. So right. It again, and I compared it to mental health. Are you okay, or are you not?
Right.
Is your sexual health positive, or is it negative?
Right. And you're right. Everybody has different experiences, and only that person knows why they're doing certain things. I think that when it comes to sexuality, there's a dictionary full of labels that people place on sex and sexual acts and people who are sexual. We talked about promiscuity. We call people whores and sluts, and we call people conservative, or we call, there's so many labels out there that people place on other people to define sexuality. And I think it's high time that people define that for themselves. What is my sexual health like? That doesn't mean that, oh yes, I'm sexually healthy because I get a lot of sex, or I'm sexually healthy because I have an orgasm every single time. But it's like a connection, you know. How does your mind think about sex? How do you feel about sex, not just internally, but also the act of? You know, I know that a lot of people grew up in very spiritual, religious households where, you know, sex was pretty much taboo. You had sex to have kids and procreate, and there was nothing, you know, there was no pleasure to be taken in that. And so, again, you know, as you get older and you start to think about, well, what does that mean? And, you know, unfortunately, some people leave here never really understanding what it means to be sexually healthy. But if we're going to have a conversation, because I think that today, you know, the kids growing up today are far more advanced than we were. They know way more about things that are happening than we've ever known at one point. But it's time to really, I think, start talking more about sexual health the same way that you talk about mental health.
You have to define what your sexual health is. You know, you talked about the labels, whore, slut. Some people are okay with that. Some people are okay with, yeah, I like to sleep around. So that's where there's consequences on the backside of it, possibly. But if they're in a good mindset with that, then their sexual health is fine. So again, you know, we kind of determine, for the most part, you know, is our sexual health positive or is it negative?
You know, a lot of people think that masturbation is taboo. It's not taboo. I personally think masturbation is the first place that you should start when you're talking about sexual health and getting to know you, getting to know your pleasure points, getting to know what you like. You know, so exploring yourself first before you can let somebody else explore you. I think it's a great way to start and a great place to start.
You know, a relationship between two people and nobody else, just those two parties. I think it's almost essential. You know, I think once you know, I mean, that whether the relationship works out or not, you know, if we're gonna have, you know, a good mindset when it comes to sexual health, I think it must start between two people involved in that relationship.
So what advice do you have for people this Valentine's Day as they go out and explore their sexual health?
Lovers be lovers. You know, I mean, they created this day, and, you know, it's kind of, not everybody's into Valentine's Day, but, you know, if you're in a relationship with somebody, take advantage of it. Go out for a meal, buy the roses, you know, and just take time out for each other. 1, 2.